Cool. All right. Well, it's a minute or so after, so we'll dive right in. Welcome. My name is John Ruggi. I'm our VP of Marketing here at BlockSpaces, and I want to welcome you to our second live interview and AMA that we've started doing this fall. If you missed our session a couple weeks ago, we got to talk about the Lightning Network and really dive deeply into that. So if you want to catch up on that, we're going to share that recording on Twitter, Discord, a couple other places here pretty shortly. So be on the lookout for that. But today we're going to dive into how Web3 and blockchain work in a business context. And we're going to dive into some of the challenges that businesses face in integrating those Web3 protocols into the Web2 software that they typically run their businesses on. So there's no one better to do that, at least in my view, than Rosa Shores and Chris Tyler, who are here with Drew, Dana, and I today. So Rosa's our CEO and co-founder. Chris is our Chief Product Officer. So they both have a pretty good depth of experience working with businesses on adopting blockchain. So before we get any further, I want to give you guys a chance to introduce yourselves. So Rosa, let's start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about your background? And then, well, Chris will ask you to do the same.
So Rosa Shores, CEO and co-founder, as mentioned. I've been in this space since 2012, kind of watched the evolution of this whole space over those years, started doing some custom development and consulting out of BlockSpaces' original kind of iteration, which was really an innovation hub for startups and people and developers that were working on projects in this space. I also am the former vice president of the Florida Blockchain Business Association. We focus on lobbying for reasonable regulation in Tallahassee around this technology. Also part of the Ag Innovation Working Group, looking at how blockchain can be used within the food supply chain, as well as a member of the blockchain task force for the National Produce Marketing Association. So a lot of focus on business applications for this technology.
I've been in software development and software sales for, 30 years now. Prior to coming to BlockSpaces, I spent about 16 years with IBM, working a lot with their data and analytics portfolio, working actually with software vendors that were going to integrate those. So I have a very strong integration background. Since about 2016 or so, I was working with IBM's blockchain group as well, which is how I came to meet the BlockSpaces team and Rosa and Gabe, and saw some of the successes that IBM had in the blockchain world, but also a lot of the challenges that they faced. And Rosa mentioned a few. We'll talk about a few as we go. But I was looking at how is blockchain as a technology going to be used in a business world. And IBM's business is their middle name, right? So here at BlockSpaces, I am Chief Product Officer. I'm working on some of the great technological products that we're bringing to market, right, that integrate blockchain into business processes, right? So how do we make it easy for these businesses to adopt this great technology?
Rosa, I want to start with you. As you mentioned, you've spent many years, working with enterprises that were trying to use blockchain in one way or another. One observation, we talked about this a lot, ourselves, is we've just seen how much media coverage there is at the moment about crypto and speculation and all the drama that's been happening with the collapse of exchanges and bankruptcies and whatnot. But I think what's overlooked beneath all the speculation in crypto itself is the fact that there's real utility that blockchain offers and real world problems that it is solving and is designed to solve and can solve. So why don't you walk us through why you think there's so much attention paid attention to that very narrow corner of the space? And if I'm a business person thinking about blockchain, what do I actually need to pay attention to instead?
Blockchain, starting with Bitcoin, is an actual technological innovation. And what did that technological innovation solve? Bitcoin becomes a really important conversation. Anytime you talk about blockchain, no matter how you feel about Bitcoin, you have to recognize that was the beginning of this technological innovation. And what that solved was kind of two long-standing computer science problems. Double spin problem, which means how do I take something that's in a digital form and make sure it's not copied? The other thing that was always a computer science problem in a digital world is it's called the Byzantine generals problem. How can I get consensus around a group of participants who I need to collaborate with on something, but I don't necessarily trust. Bitcoin solved both of those problems in this unique kind of technological way. And really, the innovation of Bitcoin took a bunch of existing technologies that already existed and just put them together in a very unique way. Which solved those two longstanding computer science problems. That brought forth a ton of innovation around all these different ways that this can be used. When you think about cryptocurrency, all cryptocurrency is, or all it's really supposed to be, is part of the consensus mechanism of the blockchain. How do I get a group of participants to collaborate around truthful information when I don't really trust any of these people? So cryptocurrency is simply a consensus mechanism. It allows for, why would a group of people that are strangers that don't necessarily trust each other, why would they participate in this single source of truth ledger? Well, in the case of a crypto, or in case of blockchain where there's cryptocurrency involved, it's because they're being awarded cryptocurrency. So that's their incentive to participate. That has been taken to extremes in some sort. And because it's difficult to understand, it's easy to corrupt and it's easy to manipulate. It's easy to kind of put blinders on people. So all they're seeing is, hey, this is like funny internet money. If I, put my life savings into this, or if I mortgage my home, I'm going to make a bunch of money and I'm going to retire to Belize. And so we have a lot of people flooding into this, what we call mercenary money, the quick capital. How can I get rich? How can I win the lottery? And so it's like that kind of thinking that has spawned things like FTX. Did the notion of crypto make that environment possible? Perhaps. But that's not the problem of the technology. That doesn't distort the actual use case and value of the technology and all of the different ways that this can be utilized and will be utilized in the future.
Yeah. And that's some of the challenges that we saw with the proofs of concept that IBM was involved in, right? They were highly successful from a proving the concept, but when you went to go and try and operationalize that and scale that up to include more than your handful of participants that proved the concept, there was no incentivization. There was, no figuring out of, okay, how are people actually going to use this within the business process that this is supposed to improve? It was like, look, we've got these large enterprises that have limitless amounts of funds that, hey, they can drive this and everybody will come. Well, no, the people that want to potentially participate, there's no incentive for them to participate. There's no way for them to actually participate that makes business sense. So, that's why some of those proofs of concept, while they did prove that things would be better, they couldn't get it to scale up. They couldn't get the adoption that they needed. So there's a lot of different industries that are looking at this technology. In healthcare, I worked in the digital rights and for music. Of course, supply chain is probably the biggest one, but it's trying to figure out, okay, what business processes make sense to be in blockchain and who are the participants and how do I incentivize them to participate?
As an organization, how did IBM view blockchain? What was culturally, how did they understand it? And I'm curious how that contrasts with what you've seen since you left and worked with pure Web3 companies.
They were one of the largest contributors to the Hyperledger project, right? And IBM immediately built a brand around it, built a whole product, built a whole marketing thing. I think it was actually part of the Super Bowl ads back in 2016 timeframe, right? Everything was going to be changed because of IBM blockchain, right? And like Rosa said, people immediately started referring to Hyperledger Fabric as IBM blockchain. It's like, no. IBM blockchain was a service and so forth built on Hyperledger Fabric. But I mean, they all, jumped in, right? This is going to change IBM. And they had a huge organization, anything from sales, marketing. They were throwing money left and right at trying to pump this whole offering up. And like I said, they had some great successes. Walmart is probably one of those. And thanks to IBM and in cooperation with Walmart, Frank Yiannis is now head of the FDA in the government because of the work that he did there at Walmart with food safety. But anyway, they spent tons of money on teaching people about blockchain, or in particular Hyperledger Fabric. They had whole development methodologies that would result in these $1 million proposals for people to adopt blockchain, right? And they had some large customers, probably 90 plus of the Fortune 100 were working with IBM to adopt Hyperledger Fabric and blockchain in their business processes, and they had those successes, but they were always within that small group of participants around the main consumer of that, right? So Walmart had like their top tier suppliers that would adopt it. When you went to their whole supply chain, it's like, what's in it for me? I'm a small business, small distributor or something like that, what do I get out of it? And now I got to integrate my systems into that. And there was no way for them to do that. They couldn't afford it. They didn't have the technological resources and so forth. So that's where it started to struggle.
What do you think can be done by the Walmarts or IBMs of the world to get all their partners adopted as well?
Well, that's the whole reason I came over here. Right? I was like, this has got to be easier. They were charging, at bare minimum, it was like $30,000 just to do a very simple integration into a system, right? That was the onboarding, basically. Then you had to pay somebody to actually write code to integrate this. And they never really thought, okay, how can we make this fit in with the business systems that a lot of these smaller providers actually work within? They just said, no, we're Walmart. We can make you do it this way. You look at some of the Web3 technology, right? And if you're going to try and just transact with another business, it's like, oh, well, give me your public key. And it's this big, long number. And it's like, oh, well, how do I know that's you? And there's a lot of this uncertainty with businesses. And how do you make that world fit sort of into a way that businesses understand? And that's what we're all about, right? Is how do we make that transition? How do you reduce costs from business processes? I think IBM had another project, right, that was in the transoceanic shipping. They showed that, just by adopting this shared ledger technology, that they could improve those business processes to the tunes of billions of dollars, every year.
Do you have a go-to comparison of your own that you use when describing the shift we're seeing?
Anybody who's interested in where I feel like we are right now, watch a movie. I tell my whole team to watch it. So watch a documentary called General Magic, and it's about the true invention of the smartphone. But it happened at a time with some of the brightest, smartest people in Silicon Valley at that time. Can't remember the year, but it was prior to us having any sort of infrastructure that could support this amazing technology invention. And so it likened it to having like a lot of light bulbs, but no power grid. And so if you invent the light bulb before there's a power grid, as amazing as that might be, it's not worth anything because you have no infrastructure to support that amazing innovation. It's literally what happened to the cell phone. You can watch this movie, watch it. It's called General Magic. It's amazing. And that to me is where we are right now. We have all of these like amazing innovations happening, but there's no power grid connecting any of them. And so these standalone applications, these standalone protocols, they just don't have the meaning they have because the infrastructure.
How important are projects like Quant Overledger, Polkadot, and Chainlink in connecting Web 2 and Web 3?
For those of you that, like me, I come from that enterprise space. I don't see businesses getting off of ERPs anytime soon, right? These companies have basically built their businesses around these, right? I mean, even things like QuickBooks, there are small, mid-sized businesses that basically they run off of QuickBooks. They're not getting off of QuickBooks. They're going to stick with it. It's just the way things are going to be for a while, right? And so how do you let them continue to work in that world that their business operates on, but yet participate in this wonderful blockchain world?
How do we as Web3 evangelists help create the value and urgency for companies to take the leap?
Web3 evangelists, I would say that, I will say that one of the things that I see reflected in this space, which is reflected in a lot of different endeavors that I've been involved with, is let's make sure that I personally feel like being a very hard-edged maximalist about any of these technologies is harmful to evangelism as a whole. I think that for myself, I feel like it's much more productive to recognize that we are going to live in a world that's not going to decentralize anytime soon, and that there's businesses and business processes that might remain that way for all of our lifetimes, right? And so how do we move people from this way of thinking about doing business and the value that these things can provide in a way that doesn't feel intimidating or threatening? When a Web3 evangelist says, we're going to disrupt the whole thing, we're going to disrupt your business process, right? I've been working with enterprises enough to know that that is literally like the worst thing you can say to a business. We think disrupt means innovation. They think disrupt means COVID. The way that we talk to businesses and help them understand that we are augmenting their existing business, we're making their business processes better. I don't think we do that by spending a lot of time arguing about what decentralization means on Twitter. If there can be more of a cohesive understanding that businesses operate in a completely different mindset and world than this Web3 environment. And I think that a little bit more understanding of that businesses need to make a slow transition. We've done a lot of voice of the customer interviews. And one of the things that is resounding is that this is a very intimidating space. And they don't even, it's very nerve-wracking to try to put your toe into this space. And so having a place where you can just understand that, Bitcoin is not a bad word. It's a technology. Blockchain does not mean that I have to fully align with one way of thinking or another. It is a technology that allows businesses to have massive efficiencies, to move the world to a more decentralized place that is better for the world as a whole. I've been in enough consulting sessions to know that there are massive business problems out there that are caused by disparate systems and people not being able to collaborate across supply chains, across counterfeit drugs, across counterfeit food. There are so many business problems that affect our lives every single day that could be fixed by this technology. So I think it's really important to understand that as a Web3 evangelist, if you're called to do anything, it's to encourage people to see that there's many different ways of thinking in the world. And this is just another way of thinking about kind of doing business.
Well, look, I think we're about out of time. So Rosa, Chris, thank you so much for your insights and sharing those today. And thanks to all of you who are here. Thanks, for asking questions and making this conversation kind of a two-way thing, not just a one-way conversation. Really appreciate that. Anyway, thanks for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we will see you all next time.